friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using this brand new Lawn Fawn Hey There stamp set, as well as the new Gotta Have Gingham 6x6 pattern paper pad. I'm going to be trying a technique today that's actually been around for a really long time and is probably the original ink smooshing technique. And I'm going to take some distress inks and rub them straight onto an acrylic block. I'm using tumbled glass, mowed lawn, shabby shutters, and scattered straw, and I'm just layering them on the block to create a little scene. Then I'm going to take a distress sprayer and spritz that with some water, and then I'm going to flip that over onto some watercolor cardstock and press that down. I'm actually going to grab something heavy and set that on top and allow that ink to soak into the paper for several minutes. About 4 or 5 minutes should do it. In the meantime, I have stamped and heat embossed my images on some more watercolor cardstock. This is Tim Holtz watercolor cardstock. I used the toothy side for the background and I'm using the smooth side for my images. And I'm going to color them in with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I started with 024 Wine Red and then blended that out with 022 Carmine Red. And I was attempting to see what these would look like without using any water. I was just going to use the markers itself, especially because this is not my favorite paper for using the zigs. I find it really difficult to blend on this particular watercolor cardstock. But I wanted to use the same paper as the background, and the Bristol, which I prefer for using with zigs, is not as absorbent for the background that I wanted to use. So I decided to just go ahead and try it, but it was a little bit too strong for me. I wanted a softer watercolor look, so I did bring in some water and just lighten that all up and lifted some of that off with a paper towel until I was happy with it. For the fence, I used 091 light gray, and I didn't even bother to bring in any water for that since it's just very pale. And then I also decided to use that as the base color for my goat. So I'm just going in and giving him a little bit of shading here and there, and then I'll bring in some water and blend him out just a bit. For my chick, I used 051 Lemon Yellow at first, and then I decided I needed a little more depth, so I brought in 050 Yellow and just blended those together. Then I brought in number 070 Orange to color in his beak and little feet, and I'm not going to even blend that since they're so small. I'm also going to go back to the 050 Yellow to color in my hay and my hay loft. And then I'll take number 090 and use that to color in the roof of my barn and also the detail on the barn door. I went over the roof with some more water to blend that out. And then I also traced over the detail on the barn door with some water and used a paper towel to lift some of that color up since it did get a little bit too dark. And then I'm also going to take that 090 and add a little bit of detail to my goat now that he's dry from the previous color. And this is just going to give him a little bit more personality and character. It does take quite a bit of water to get these colors to blend out on this paper, but I think the end result was worth it. So I just had to keep working at it until I was happy with the results. Going back to our background, it's time to lift up that block and reveal our scene. I think that looks really cool, and it'll have a different look depending on how much water you spritz on those distress inks. And now I'm going back with a paintbrush and some clean clear water and just softening up the edges because I want to tear them and give them a deckled edge look. So the thing you want to note when you're doing this kind of technique is to just tear the paper towards you. If you tear away from you, you won't get that nice white core of the paper shining through, so it won't have quite as many little edges to it. So I'm just going to go all the way around until it has that really softened look, which I think goes really well with watercolors in particular. And then I'm going to take my Gotta Have Gingham paper. I'm using a yellow gingham print, and I'm just going to hold the watercolor panel on top of that so I can see what size I need, and I'm going to tear off the sides until it has the nice deckled edge to match. For my sentiment, I'm going to take some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'm going to stamp out the Happy Birthday sentiment right onto our watercolor background. And I'm going to ink that up twice so that it gets a really good impression, especially on this textured watercolor paper. And then I'm going to coat that in some clear embossing powder and heat set that so it'll match all of our images. And while I have my Misty out, I'm going to go ahead and stamp the inside of my card. I'm using Lawn Fawn's Sunflower ink to stamp the sheep and the You Are the Best sentiment, and I'll stamp that down twice as well so it's nice and bold. So my card will read, Happy Birthday, You Are the Best. To add a little more interest to the outside of the card, I took the chicken, chick, and egg and mounted those together onto an acrylic block, and I'm stamping those all around the outside edge of my card front using that same sunflower ink, and that's just going to add a little bit more detail since our focal panel is rather small. Now we can go back and start assembling that focal panel. I'm taking some Tombow Mono liquid glue to adhere my images down to my scene. And I really thought it was cool how that texture kind of made it look like there was a little path going up to the barn. So I'll put that up at the top as well as the fence posts since they look a little bit smaller in scale. That way they're going to look like they're further back in the scene and give it a little bit more depth. And then I'll add my little goat and chick towards the front right above the sentiment. To assemble my card, I'll take that Gotta Have Gingham pattern paper and adhere that down to our card base with a little bit more liquid glue. Just make sure that's nice and centered and then press that down into place. And then I will take my focal panel and I've added some foam tape to the back of that. So I'll just peel off the backer strips and then I'm going to center that as well. To finish off the card, I'm just going to go back with those tiny images and fill in some of the gaps that are more noticeable now that the pattern paper and focal panel have been attached. And that is going to complete our card for today. There's another peek at the inside and a close-up look at the front of the card. I hope you guys enjoyed this revisit on an old technique that maybe you'd be tempted to try yourself. It's a pretty easy one, and I think the results are really cute and could work for a number of different kinds of cards. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that already. Here's 2 extra videos to tide you over until the next one in case you need a little more inspiration. I hope you have an amazing day. Bye-bye.